the record.
Yeah.
Great.
Some of the things you might want to think about when thinking about your leadership transition and really about your membership and turning them into leaders are thinking about what your goals are for the rest of the semester or the term. The semester is probably only a couple more weeks for most of you. There might be a little bit more of a summer term this semester than normal, but thinking about what goals did you and your leadership team have for this semester and how has that changed a little bit based on all of this. For example, if you had planned to have a really extensive stress last week, to celebrate the end of the year and finals and remind people to do self-care, maybe that's transitioned in some part online and maybe some of those things couldn't happen. Does that free up room in your budget for next year? Does that free up room in your budget to do something this summer for your chapter members and leaders that you might not have been able to in the past? Is that something that you think is so important and you want to make sure it's a real priority that in the fall, even if you're graduating, your new leaders are ready to take it on in whatever format it needs to be? So that could look like starting to plan events or have talks with people about what kind of infrastructure will be ready on campus if your school has already told you that you're going to be in person to some extent or online to some extent. So really thinking about how you can set up your fall leaders, whether you are your fall leaders or there are new leaders coming on, for the most success. Like I mentioned, a lot of people have trouble kind of turning people who are members but not quite leaders yet into those leaders that will take over, chapter leadership eventually. We really promote and suggest that y'all delegate responsibilities out to other people in your chapter, likely your other chapter leaders, but excuse me, to some extent even your members. And this is a really great time for kind of a low stakes, give something to try and see if it sticks kind of work. We're all kind of experimenting and trying to figure out what's going to be best for our communities and what's going to work best like with technology and what messages are the most important right now. So if there's a member who's maybe come to a lot of your meetings during the course of the year, who maybe has expressed that they're not ready for a leadership role or maybe needs a little bit of a push to see if they want to do that role, ask if they might want to participate in leading a section of your next meeting. Maybe they find an article to discuss or a TED Talk that they want to share, and they lead a discussion, or they want to do a kind of activity to get to know people or to promote some kind of self-care. Be really creative about ways that you can be empowering others to take on those leadership roles and kind of helping them or pushing them in the right direction if that might be something they need. And then thinking about how you were trained for your leadership role. And for some of you, the answer is going to be, I was not trained at all remotely. And for some of you, hopefully, the answer is, I had a binder with some materials, or my advisor sat down with me in the beginning of the year and gave me, some bullet points. But think about your training, whatever it was, and then figure out what about it worked really well and what about it didn't work so great. So, maybe having the process for student organizations at your school is really helpful. In the summer, often you might need to, excuse me, often you might need to re-register an organization or say, we want a table at the involvement fair in the fall, or request a budget. Those are things that maybe are written down somewhere or maybe not written down somewhere that could be helpful for your incoming leaders to know. And thinking about things that you've put in place since you took on leadership. So maybe your chapter now has a Snapchat account. Like, how do you get access to that account as an administrator? This is a great time to make sure that your email, like your whatever at school.edu, is not the login for all of those accounts. I know that's usually the easiest login to get, and especially when we're just starting chapters or trying something out, but might be a good time to ask your school if you can get an ActiveMinds at school.edu, or setting up a Gmail or Yahoo or whatever the services. That way more people have access to it. So some of those logistical things and some of those things of like, literally, how were you trained? Did somebody sit down with you over coffee? Did somebody send you a Google Drive or a Dropbox folder? Did you have a leadership retreat where outgoing leaders shared kind of their words of wisdom with incoming leaders? Obviously, some of those things can happen, and some of those things need to happen a little bit differently than they might have. But thinking about how you would like to receive this information and how you would have or did feel most prepared, excuse me, and kind of setting that up for success with your fellow chapter leaders. The only other thing I'll add here is thinking about the logistics of your transition. So a lot of folks have elections around this time of year. To some extent, I think having the elections online rather than everyone sit around a table and then write your vote on a little piece of paper that we're going to go in the corner and count could be a little more seamless. So it could open up the opportunity for people to share more about their background or hope or experience and why they want to be a leader. You can have them do videos of them kind of giving a talk, or maybe everything's in writing and you want them to propose an idea for an event or an idea for how they're going to set up goals for the fall. SurveyMonkey is a great tool. We use it all the time for like pretty much everything. It's free, like to the extent that you will probably be using it, it's free. There are lots of survey sites like that. I'm sure there are new ones that I don't even know about. So definitely use the internet to your benefit and see if opening up kind of the election process and the nomination process online helps you bring more people into that. But with that, I'm going to stop talking. I think we're just going to point out a few of our resources next, and then we want to devote the rest of the time to discussion. Kel, is that the next slide? Am I right? Yeah. So really quick, you all found this, so I think you've probably become familiar with our COVID resource hub. If you go to activeminds.org/remote-resources or activeminds.org/COVID, you'll get there. We're updating it a lot. It's very good. I think a lot of you are in Slack. So if you haven't already, join Slack so you can talk to each other and to us. And I have office hours every week. So go to activeminds.org/office hours and you'll get sent directly to my calendar to book a half-hour video call like this. That said, though, I want to turn it over to some of your fellow chapter leaders who have some things to share about what they've been up to. So I know we've got Kama and Julia from University of Pittsburgh, and we've got Jaden from Mountain Ridge High School. I don't know how you guys want to split that up, but once they give their examples, we're just going to launch into our discussion. So take some notes on things you want to ask questions about or things that you think are really cool and valuable. I'm going to stop talking now.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen as well so we can have the larger screen. But for those student leaders, if you want to share your screen throughout talking, feel free to go ahead and do so, okay?
Okay, so hi everyone, my name's Julia. I'm from the University of Pittsburgh. I've been the president of Pitt Active Minds for the past 2 years, and I was the vice president during my sophomore year. And I've really been in Active Minds in our chapter since day one of freshman year. So it's been an interesting way to finish, and we're transitioning our leadership online. Pitt actually finished school a couple of weeks ago, so we're kind of ahead of other schools in having to do this transition, because we had our transition meeting yesterday on Zoom with all of our incoming members. And something that I've really learned in leadership transitions over the years is that when I started doing leadership in my chapter, I really didn't have any kind of guidance or advice on how to do it. So I kind of figured out what I wanted to see in the leadership board and what I wish I had as I was learning my role and how to do things, because I had to learn a lot of it by scratch. And so like for our leadership transition, I made like a Google Doc that I had. I even had like a table of contents, so you can go through it, and I'll share the screen in a bit. But we had our leadership election online on like a Google Doc. All of our chapter files and everything is based in Google Drive. So we have people just submit applications online. And then usually like our chapter is growing a lot. So instead of elections, like we'll have people apply for leadership and we'll just like fit them in however they can to try to keep people engaged. Because I knew that when I joined Active Minds, I was looking to like do advocacy work instead of just like attending meetings. So I knew that a lot of students, when they're looking for mental health advocacy clubs, they're looking to do things. So like beyond just president, vice president, business manager, we created a lot more positions for people. Like basically if they wanted something, we just like made something for them to like help them do whatever projects they want to work on. And so I'm gonna share my screen. And this is like a Google Doc that I made to help students have something to refer to as they take on these leadership roles. And it covers everything from responsibilities to Active Minds and to our university. So students know kind of a general overview, because a lot of times when students join, they're not quite familiar with the way that we're connected with Active Minds as a national nonprofit, and like what that actually looks like, to get a feel for like what like such a huge network of students that we're connected to, because sometimes they don't realize that it's more than just our school. And it's such a great resource, and so people like to help them be familiar with that, I like talk about that just so they like are aware of it. And basically I can click through some of it. We had just like went through all different responsibilities of the club, and like I have notes for all different roles that people are taking on, of like tips that we've found helpful. So we had a Zoom meeting just for leadership transition with both outgoing and incoming leadership board members. So we'd had the old leadership board members like kind of talk about what they did over the years and what works and what doesn't work, so that the incoming members like have an idea of like what is most effective. So like for like advertising, like what clubs to reach out to, who to collaborate with. And then we also had our advisor, who is a counselor at the counseling center, join us. And that's been really helpful because it helps leadership members be more familiar with our advisor, and like get direct updates from the counseling center. Like for us, we just got updated that our counseling center waived fees for the summer. So like all students can get free counseling even if they're not taking summer classes. So that's helpful for us to like disseminate information. And then after we like go through the leadership guide and like talk about logistics of the club, we also will brainstorm ways we can improve the way the club is organized. So Kama, did you want to talk about like, so Kama's our incoming president, and we were talking about like changes to different incentives for attendance, and like possibly creating like different attendance, not requirements, because everything is always like optional, so people have flexibility and don't have like the pressure of attending events, but ways to like incentivize attendance. So if someone ever wants to become a leadership board member, we can have like a quantitative record of their attendance to say like, yeah, you've attended at least like half of our meetings or half of our events. And I think it's interesting to have that input. What do you think, Kama? I think we had interesting like brainstorming with new members.
After like our meeting yesterday was very focused on like discussing the responsibilities of each of the new incoming officers and the board members, and we did quite a lot of brainstorming during that meeting. For example, the incentives, a little bit of programming outside of our club with like outreach and like bringing other clubs and student organizations together. And yeah, with like leadership transition after this, we're kind of going to like follow up with like a few meetings in the summer just to get to know each other and further expand on these ideas, and also so that the board members are able to familiarize with like the goals for the next year. So what we did during this last meeting was talk about what our goals were kind of for like the past year, what we had been working on, and now it's going to be like more focused on seeing what we can do in the next year. For example, bringing that incentives, incentivizing coming to meetings, membership, how to increase programming for if we are online in the fall. And so like, yeah, that's like what's going to be following up this part of our leadership transition.
Yeah, I think it was also a good opportunity for all members because we had we have like 7 leadership board members incoming, and like everyone has varying degrees of involvement in the past. And so I thought it was a good opportunity for everyone to pitch ideas that they want to like plan, and we can talk about projects we've been working on so everyone can be like caught up to speed and like I know we talked about like some people were inspired by some of the discussion to work on like more projects and like more topics. So I thought it's like a good brainstorming session too.
What was really nice about yesterday's meeting is we did it through Zoom, and like we did it at a time where everyone could join, because some of our incoming board members, like during the in-person school year, were unable to come to a lot of meetings due to schedule conflicts. And so like having the resource of like Zoom and being able to come together at a time that works for everyone really helped with like facilitating the leadership transition, because people were finally able to like get to know the team as a whole and at least like familiarize themselves with the faces.
Yeah, and I think having this document is something that can really help future leadership transitions because it'll like basically be a living document.
Yeah.
And students like can keep updating it as they find new methods that work. And then it's something you can always refer back to like as you're learning your role throughout the year and be like, well, how do I make that contract for a speaker again? And they can look back to it.
It can also be edited constantly just in case things come by or new changes are made in policies and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. Julia, would you be willing to share this document or an edited version of this document?
Yeah.
Cool. I feel like in Slack, people would be really, really excited to see this.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. And if you have questions for Julia and Kama, we'll be opening up the discussion a little bit more in just a minute. But Jaden, do you want to jump in a little bit? And Julia, you can unshare your screen.
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in and talk a little bit. We've done our leadership transition over the past 3 or 4 weeks already. So one thing that I was really thinking about is how we started our chapter this year. So this is the first time we've had to have a leadership transition. So my training was basically everything I could find on the Active Minds website, which is great. And I wanted to kind of consolidate those resources along with other things we found at our school, specifically like processes for getting things posted on the school bulletin and, the school social media policies and all of that, and consolidating that all in one place. So I'm going to see if I can, here we go. So we created a Google Drive account, and we've basically dumped every file or PowerPoint that we've used over the past year in here. So we have like our school required paperwork, like our constitution, our approval paperwork. We have stuff like the foundation workbooks and stuff that we've worked through throughout this year, and other links to things on the Active Minds websites. And then we've also kept some flyers from different events we've done, but mostly I think something that'll be really helpful is we've kept all our PowerPoints here for people to refer back to, for our future officers to refer back to in the future, which I think would be helpful in planning things for the next year or coming up with ideas. But more specifically for the leadership transition, the way we logistically formatted it is we used a Google form, which is very similar to SurveyMonkey. And we had people submit videos of themselves explaining why they wanted to be an officer. And also they had to propose a new idea for the year. So like an example idea we got that was really good was someone wanted to partner with our mentor program for incoming students, and like our freshman first day event, to include our to have our organization involved in that, our chapter involved in that, we think would be really valuable. And so what we did is we had a document that basically went through what the positions were, what their responsibilities were, their eligibility. So they had to be in the club for this year. And 2 of our officers were already officers this year. So that's going to help make the transition a little smoother, I feel like. They have to be per our school requirements. They have to be in good academic standing. And then, yeah, we had people film videos and then either upload them to YouTube unlisted and share us the link, or share them on Google Drive. And they had videos, so they talked about why they're passionate about mental health, why they think Active Minds is, or why they would like to be a leader in the Active Minds chapter at our school, and then also propose a new activity, like I mentioned before. And then what we did is we compiled all the videos into a document, which these are the people who are now the officers. We compiled all the videos into one document and then shared this document out with our chapter so that people could get to know our new officers a little bit more. And like I said, they've all been in the club before, but just, so people can put a face to the name, and then also hear about why they're running for the position and why they are invested in the chapter. And so that was kind of logistically what we did for our leadership transition. And we've already started kind of like including them in some of our activities as we're leading to the end of the year here. Like for the month of May, everybody is doing we posted the Here For You icon, and we had each of our current and incoming officers post something about why mental health is important to them, or why they think that, whether they have a story or something that they've seen in their lives, or they just think it's something that, we need to talk about more. We had people share that to kind of also, get their names out there, and also share why they're invested in the club.
You should email me those. Also, there's a question from somebody, about how long the videos were supposed to be, and I think somebody else caught that it was 2 minutes.
Yeah, people do 2-minute videos just because at the time we didn't know how many people were going to be interested in running, and we didn't want to have a ton of people making really long videos, because then we figured our club membership would not go through the trouble of watching every single video. So yeah, that's why we had the 2-minute limit there. And I think that worked out pretty well for our videos. Yeah.
Awesome. I think we're gonna go ahead and just like open up discussion now. So feel free to unmute yourself. We've got a pretty small group, so feel free to stay unmuted if that's something that's helpful. And you can ask questions to the people who spoke, or we can kind of circle back to some of the questions I posed, or if you have thoughts or questions or ideas that you want to share or ask. Yes.
Hi, I'm Caitlin. I'm from San Diego State. Thank you for doing this. It's always very helpful to hear from my peers and everything. This is a question for Julia and Kama. I really like how you guys made new roles kind of depending on what the students wanted to do, to kind of promote like advocacy and stuff like that, rather than just having like, because we at SJC, we just have like president, vice president, treasurer, like just the normal ones. But how did you kind of make those new positions kind of? And is it something that you see that like it will stick for the future, or is it something like just for this year kind of?
So the 3 main roles that we've created are fundraising, like coordinator, events coordinator, and outreach coordinator, because those are 3 areas that we've been like having a lot of different projects that people have been working on anyway. So for fundraising, it would usually be like coordinating different events that are like raising money, so like t-shirt sales and things like that. Events, usually people like to work on projects like planning for speakers, or like a while in the spring before events were canceled, we were planning like collaborations between different groups, because a lot of students are members of multiple clubs. And then outreach is because we have been developing a lot of peer education programs, so we needed a lot of help with coordinating students to speak to other clubs. So we have different like PowerPoints that we present on like VAR and like how to find a therapist. So that's like a lot of stuff that like areas where our leadership was having trouble juggling alone. It was just helpful to add additional members where we needed more help running that. And it really, and also if students have ideas for like new things, that's something that people can just, I think on our ballots we had the roles where you can apply for, and then another option, people would just write in something they want to add.
We also have like one or two, like if we need to, we'll have like 2 members for like events, chair, outreach, or fundraising. If we have, and then we had like 7 members, so like we did like double up on some of the responsibilities. And that's also to like help with, we've been trying for a while to have like committees just to like divvy up the responsibilities of these bigger projects, like our peer education, our speaker events, and everything. And so in a way, these responsibilities are just like more and more divided so that they can become separate entities in the future. And so it's just a matter of seeing what your goals are and what your bigger projects are going to be in the future, and seeing if you can give them their own like space, their own leaders as well.
I think it really promotes, especially for younger students that aren't ready yet for like a higher up role. It helps them feel more comfortable in like a leadership role, even if they're just in charge of like a small group of 5 students, to be doing their own little projects that really do have a big impact. And like we always tell people, like if they have an idea, like we'll give them whatever they need to make that happen. Like people email us like being like, can we have this speaker like do this specific topic? Yeah, and I think it also helps. We talked a little bit in our meeting yesterday for leadership transition, because like Kama, you're still having finals because of you were studying abroad and like the schedule's weird. And another perk of having like creating more leadership positions or allowing like certain positions to have 2 people in it is helping balance out not only delegating responsibilities, but also if someone's having a difficult time either with mental health or other things going on in their life, it helps kind of have like coverage of like if you can't manage all of that work for that week or that month, like people have your back. And I think that's a really important thing, because I think we had a little like moment in our meeting yesterday where like everyone was like stressed about like when are we going to start our like summer Zoom meetings again. And I was like, don't put pressure on yourself just to rush into that. And like having more people helps people balance it out of like if you can't run into the meeting this week, we'll have someone else run it. So I think that's another valuable aspect of having more people involved.
Thank you for that, all of that information.
There are other thoughts or questions or ideas, or Macy, go ahead.
That I wanted to pose to y'all. I'm wondering, like each year, like, do you open applications for each position, or do you wait until the seniors graduate to build like open them up again? I'm curious.
For us at Pitt, we like refresh every year. So sometimes people want to change roles around. Like I think last year no one else had applied for president. I think it just depends on like the way the club is going. Like I think the membership and interest like ebbs and flows over the years. And I know like I'm predicting that our club's gonna be growing a lot because I have a lot of confidence in Kava and the leadership team we have. So I feel like for the past couple of years, our leadership applications have been kind of open and we've just been like taking everyone. But I know that eventually we'll have to be like changing the way the elections work. But for now, we're kind of like every year refreshing and moving people around and just put them where they feel that they're like strongest in that role.
Thank you.
I'll also just say to check your school's policies, because some schools require that like people can't be grandfathered into roles, and some say like elections need to happen this particular way. So just double check and decide, which of those policies Nope, I'm not going to finish that sentence. Yeah.
This is a more difficult question, but how do you hold a leader who like got into the role and they haven't been doing their responsibilities accountable?
Kama, did you want to add for this or no?
I'm trying to think if we have, I don't think we have an example, but like,
I think in the fall we did, so we had to switch our business manager like halfway through the year because there was like certain paperwork that was supposed to be done and like she just wasn't responsive, and we kind of had deadlines for it. And so like at that point, like after like a few emails and like discussions about it, we like just like had to switch it eventually. So that's like obviously kind of the worst case scenario, is having to like remove people from a role because you don't really want to have to do that. But something that Kama and I have been planning for next year is to kind of have, we like at our general body meetings, to make it more like work, like the committee members or like different leadership roles will be kind of like reporting what they've done over the past week and then like commit to a plan for the next week. So they'll say, okay, I'll have this thing done by next meeting, to try to create that like expectation of like yes, you'll be getting things done like on a fairly regular basis.
Also, another thing is we talked about having a lot of people on the e-board and just like accepting whoever, oh, that's my brother, just accepting people who applied this year. And like, that's something I see being very beneficial in this scenario in the future, is like if someone is not working as much as they used to or as they want to, we definitely can pitch in, help out, figure out what is holding them back, what is it that they need to prioritize first in order for them to come back, like as a leader. And so that's definitely something. It isn't like, with scenarios like this, it's a little difficult because we really don't know what it is that's causing them to be a little unresponsive or causing them to withdraw a bit. And so I think it is important to like help out as much as you can before like going to the next level and being like gonna have to step down type thing.
Yeah, that's when you can use your VAR skills to see how they're doing. But yeah, I think I think a lot of times over the years we've had a lot of students in different roles. Like you have like creating that open line of communication for them to feel comfortable coming to you and telling you like, hey, sorry, I've like haven't been as like up to date on my like responsibilities. I've had a lot of exams and like stress, and my mental health hasn't been doing as well. And like I've had a lot of students like come to me and say that just because like they haven't been like doing the things or like sending emails or posting things as they like usually were. And usually that's just really, for us, we've like had enough people involved to be able to adapt to that. Does that help at all?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'd say this is the hardest. I think this is the hardest part about being really in any role, but especially as a student leader, with talking with peers and friends in most cases. I really recommend to all the students I talk to hosting like a leadership retreat in the beginning of the semester, to just sit down and like get to know each other if you don't know each other really well, or learn more about people's goals and priorities, and just learn more about people's like schedules or set expectations for each role. So it's a great time to go back to your constitution and say, our constitution says that the secretary will send meeting minutes, but it doesn't specify like when they'll send them. And me as president, I would like them sent, within a week. Is that doable for you, secretary? So really being very clear and upfront about those expectations, and also being really clear and upfront about a way to communicate to the team that for whatever reason, they're not going to be able to meet those expectations and ask for help. So really being as setting as many expectations as you can, and giving people the opportunity to step up and step back, especially like as semesters shift, maybe somebody didn't expect didn't expect this class to be as hard as it is, or require as much time. Maybe somebody has a really intensive internship in the spring, but in the fall they've got plenty of time to commit. So having really consistent check-ins with your leadership team about what's working and not working, and really bringing your advisor into those conversations, especially if you anticipate them being harder conversations. They're probably a very good they're probably a very good person with a lot of experience working with students who have all these competing demands, and understanding, it's a real learning experience, I think, for all of us to be able to have difficult discussions, and we have them as coworkers and partners and all those things. And it's a real learning moment for people to understand their own capacity for, I need to sleep and eat and like take care of myself and watch Parks and Rec and do my homework and these things, and like how much time does that leave in my day. So I hear you. It's difficult.
Yeah, I guess like the main concern I had is like I had one experience where I was like completely ghosted for like months, which is like not great. And it was like not even anything like me asking them to do anything. I was Venmoing them money and I was ghosted.
Oh.
It's like yeah. But like after I got ghosted and I tried following up about the responsibilities and I still got ghosted. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right.
And that's hard. And I mean, I've read a lot of articles in the past like couple years about like how ghosting is now the new normal, which I hate personally. And it's hard for us, especially as people talking about mental health and worrying about people and making sure that they're okay. That's another time where your advisor might be able to step in and say, okay, I'm going to play intermediary in this case and just make sure we're all on the same page about what's happening. But I hear that. That's really hard.
So I noticed a question in the chat box that I'm going to read out loud, and I wonder if this might help us sort of transition the conversation a bit, where we can talk about maybe how examples of like how y'all recruit good leaders or members in the first place. So the question is, we are trying to start an Active Minds as a club. What advice do you have with starting up your clubs? Do people have thoughts on recruiting members and sort of major priorities at the get-go?
I can answer that, if that's okay. So for us, like if there is not enough members to fill up all the positions, we have, or like the committee like slots as well, we have like application process in September that we send out, and we post out everywhere, like on our Facebook, Instagram, all the class groups, if you guys have Facebook class groups, and like it highlights all the positions and the responsibilities, and also like has some questions to like, it's mostly like why you're interested in mental health, like what are some past leadership experience, and like what are some of your other commitments in the semester or like the year, and maybe any other supplemental questions you think are necessary. And then we have interviews, so that way we can get to know them more face to face. They're more of an informal interview because we don't want to like make it like very nerve-wracking. It's just to get to know them better, like know their interests, like their passions, etc.
I'll also just add there are some chapters that do like a spring leadership transition for most of their roles, but in the fall they reserve like a staying position for a representative from the first year class, a representative from second and third year, and a representative, well, often they're seniors or juniors, so maybe that one's a little less important, but really working to get first year student, like reserving a spot for them to be, the eager first year students they are and really excited to support and help out. And kind of bring them into your leadership pipeline.
Something that we did all of our current officers knew each other already prior to working together to found our Active Minds chapter. We were all already very aware of the mental health scene at our school, for better or for worse. And so that kind of fueled us starting. So it's nice to know, it was nice to have personal connections with people that we already knew. And also then you know a little bit more about their work ethic and those kinds of things. Helps avoid some of those uncomfortable situations. But another thing in terms of just recruiting members, our school has a like a tabling opportunity for all the clubs on our campus at the beginning of the year. And we had like a paper for people to write their names and also their school emails. And then we put all their school emails into basically a mailing list. So people who signed up would be aware of when stuff started up, but also, you know, if maybe they couldn't come to the first meeting or the second meeting or whatever, they still have the information if they want to become more involved because they showed interest at some point in that beginning. So I think collecting contact information for people right off the bat is helpful. We also use another service called Remind, which allows us to send out like blast text messages basically. And it's as simple as like scanning a QR code to sign up or like texting a little code to a number. And then it's basically like a mailing list, but through text. And we found that to be also really valuable at mass communicating. And social media. We use lots of social media as well.
Something else that can help with recruiting new members is like we have things that are like peer education, like if you present to like classes or like different clubs, or like residence halls, like ask RAs to like present, because like a lot of resident assistants are looking for like programming for their floors, and or like emailing the psychology department for like your events and meetings, because like for us a lot of the psych major, like most of our club is like psych majors and people interested in psychology and mental health that way. And those are good ways to recruit people for the club itself. Like we go into clubs to educate and then we end up gaining a few members just from that. So there's a lot of ways that we can get like recruit members from not just pure recruitment ways of just like teaching people things. Yeah.
Wait, that actually gave me a good idea. Like, what if like you guys do an informational session, like in the beginning of the year before you like I mean the applications could be like before the application deadline or something, like to kind of explain the club, the different roles, responsibilities, and answer questions in person. Or if learning is online, I guess Zoom. I mean through Zoom, sorry.
That's what my chapter did, and it was fun. We had like snacks and we got to meet new people. And we did some late at night, which was fun too.
So something that we do for the first couple weeks of school is usually a first meeting is introducing what Active Minds is. The second meeting is usually, we've had like the second meeting usually is a peer education program. So our first couple meetings usually have the most amount of students. So that's usually the best time where we teach like how to help a friend or how to find a therapist. So that's how we can get most members getting that information before they leave. And usually we'll like get a lot of students staying just from that, just because they find it interesting and want to be more involved from just like teaching them valuable like skills of how to get mental health services. And another thing that like kind of helps with recruitment is another like beginning of the year thing we do is having tours of the counseling center after hours. Because our advisor is a counselor at the counseling center, she can get us in at like 5 or 6 p.m. after all the sessions are closed. You don't have to worry about privacy. And we'll get especially a lot of first year students coming in because they want to be familiar with the counseling center in a very friendly way. So instead of it being as intimidating, they're like, yeah, I've been to the counseling center before. And if we could do that digitally, we talked about having a Zoom call with a bunch of the counselors and the director, just so students can like know what the counselors look like, and so if they ever need to reach out later, they already are familiar and like they're friendly faces, so they feel less maybe intimidated or like less stigma about reaching out if they've already talked to them.
Oh, one more thing I want to add in, I was just thinking more as everyone's talking, is that we at the end of last year, we had kind of, our school requires us to write a constitution and sign it with all the officers, which I think is a fairly common practice. And we basically, I basically compiled a lot of information from the Active Minds website, from our school policies in terms of starting chapters. And we met with a core group of probably like 10 people who, like I said, we already knew each other. We were already kind of invested and aware of mental health. And we worked through writing that constitution before we even had our elections. And then after that, we have 5 officer positions. So we had elections among that group. And then that's how we kind of started up our organization. That way everybody knew, like everyone had a say in what they wanted our chapter to look like. And they were also aware of what, generally the responsibilities and the, what the goals of Active Minds chapters are. And then in terms of recruiting members, some other things that we did is we have we talked to some other groups on campus, so like peer mediating groups that are with other students, or groups that students that work like counselors assistants who have already shown interest, and we gained a lot of members that way. And then for outreach, one more thing about the table that I just remember we did is we were donated those like the silicone bracelets from an organization in our area called the Andy Sunshine Foundation. It's also a mental health awareness, and they actually donated those bracelets for us to give out at our table. So having something for people to take away, like to physically take with them. We also had like lollipops, anything like that can keep Active Minds in their mind. Is really helpful, I think, in retaining people.
I love that. And Julie, I really like what you said about thinking about your meeting attendance, as it ebbs and flows throughout the year, and capitalizing on those first couple meetings and making sure that like you really have a drive to get people coming back. Because that's something we often hear. We had like 30 people in our first meeting and it was amazing. And now we have like 6 people showing up, and that's great, but not 30. So A, very common, and B, really thinking about that first meeting and what's the thing that would make you come back to a student organization beyond the fact that you're interested in the mission and like the people. Yeah.
I think something else that helps is creating a schedule. So like sometimes we've created a rough schedule of like week by week of like topics that we talk about throughout the semester. So even if they don't come for a couple of weeks, they might see like, oh, like that meeting's about a topic that I'm interested in, and they might stop by. Or like we've been talking about having other clubs appoint like mental health chairs and like Asian Student Alliance so that they can have like touch points from that club to connect us from there.
Thank
Food
you.
is, oh, sorry.
Oh, all good. Thank you all. This has been wonderful because, as I said, we're trying to start it over at Highline, and I've been in contact with a few advisors. So we do have some people, but I will definitely be in contact with you, Kel, later on.
Yeah, sure. Myself or Robin, and also I know we plugged this really quickly earlier, but our student Slack network, I highly recommend that you jump in there too, because you can post questions. You might be able to find some people in a similar situation to sort of bounce ideas back and forth. And many folks who are on this call or have participated in others are in there as well, who might offer some great suggestions. But yeah, we're happy to connect further through office hours or other student chats to support you, okay? Awesome.
Any other thoughts as we close up? I wanted to touch, Julie, I think you also said about the counselors and kind of humanizing them. For a lot of students, college might be the first time that they are able to receive mental health care. And a lot of people have a very cartoon Freud kind of impression of what therapy is. So a lot of chapters do events about what is therapy? I go to therapy and it's like this day to day. And my therapist and I curse a lot and we talk about this TV show and it's cool. But a lot of chapters will do counselor out of the office events. So, handing out cupcakes, or maybe they're making like blue pancakes in the cafeteria one day. If your school colors are blue, it might be weird otherwise, but kind of thinking about ways to humanize them, and having them come and talk at meetings has been really popular, especially if they're sharing, here's a self-care technique that I use, or if you do have a lot of psychology majors who might be looking to go into a kind of clinical counseling path, like what is it like to be a counselor at a college, or what is it like in private practice, because a lot of them probably have also done that, or what does a research path look like. Yeah, really use your counseling center.
We only have a couple minutes left. Does anybody have any sort of like last minute questions, comments, concerns?
All right, cool. Well, like we said, be in touch. You can email us, shoot us messages on Slack. If you search in Slack for like the members, you can search for national staff and you'll find me and Kel and the rest of our colleagues. And yeah, check out our COVID Hub. We have another student chat coming up next week on Tuesday. Nope. Hang on, I'm going to check this time before I say that. It's coming. Hang on.
I think
I think you said the 12th. Yes, Tuesday the 12th at 3:00. And we're going to talk about celebrating your graduating members. Obviously, this year kind of sucks for the class of 2020. I'm sorry, class of 2020 people, in the sense that they don't get to kind of have their formal celebrations and graduations and things like that. So we're going to talk about some ideas to hopefully support them. And if you are a class of 2020 person, please come and tell us how you would like to be supported and celebrated. Cool. Well, it was great talking with you all today. Have a great rest of your day and week and weekend. Time is weird, but have a good rest of your, existence, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.
All right. See you all in Slack in the meantime.
Bye.